or welcome back to the 8th Concession. My name is Natalie. It's January here on the 8th Concession in Southern Ontario, Zone 5B. And although it looks like gardening season's just around the corner, it really isn't here. It's green, there's no snow, but the garden still has to sleep for a little while longer. It's hard not to get antsy about planting and starting plants. So although I can start a few seeds this time of year, I can start maybe onions and leeks, which need a longer time if you're starting them from seed. For the most part, I still have to wait. But it is a great time to start thinking about how I'm going to start my seeds and to get my setup ready so that I can get right to it when the time is right. Now, I thought that maybe today I would share with you some of my favorite hacks for starting seeds to make sure you get off to the best start and your seedlings are the healthiest and the strongest. So that's what I'm going to do today. My favorite 10 hacks for starting seeds. So we're going to go inside and get started. Now, I start a lot of my plants from seed, both flowers and vegetables. But a great hack to not waste time and energy and even money is to pre-sprout your seeds. What that means is to have them start to germinate before you actually put them in soil or pots or whatever else you use to start your seedlings indoors. Now, the reasons for this are many. First of all, you can check the viability of your seeds. As I mentioned when I was cleaning up my seed packages, I have some seeds, especially flower seeds, that are kind of old. And I'm not always quite sure how long I've had them, especially if they were gifted to me. So by pre-sprouting the seeds, I can see if they are in fact going to grow at all without going through the trouble of preparing the pots, taking up that space, putting on heat mats or whatever else you're going to do to get them started, and then nothing grows. And you've got these empty pots sitting there and you don't even know how long to wait. So pre-sprouting your seeds is a great way to get around that. You can plant only the seeds that are actually going to grow, and you can then determine if you need to even start some more seeds. What if only half of them germinate? Then you can start a few more. Now, a lot of people who do this use the plastic baggie method. And all that is they take a Ziploc bag and some paper towel, which they wet with water. They put the paper towel in the Ziploc bag, and then they put it in a warm place and wait for the seeds to germinate. I'm not a huge fan of the plastic baggie method. It's handy and convenient, but what I don't like is when seeds sprout, they send up leaves. They want to grow up, and sometimes if this is flat or if you're stacking it, it's hard for those seeds to send up those first leaves. So what I like to use instead are just little containers that give the seeds room to grow up so that those first leaves do not struggle to open. Now, you can get these anywhere. I try to get glass where I can to avoid too much plastic on our farm, but if you have to, they're easy to find, they're inexpensive. You can get them in different sizes, you can get ones that stack, or if you're a little thriftier, you can find things to repurpose. I believe this used to hold chocolate hazelnut spread, just little sample ones, and it's glass, which I like. So I try to use these types of containers, which are going to give the plants room to grow up. So just to show you what it looks like, you put a little piece of paper towel inside, wet it, and then put the seeds in, and you can see that these cucumber seeds, some have already started to put out little white roots. And this is when I would take them and transplant them into another little pot with soil to start growing, because I know exactly which ones are going to take. The seeds that you're trying to sprout will want some warmth, especially seeds like tomatoes and peppers and my loofahs, which are warm weather plants. They'll germinate faster and you'll have a higher germination rate if they're warm. So what can you do to keep your little containers warm? Well, you can put them near a radiator or a heating vent in your floor if you have one, or near a radiator in the wall if you have one. Or you can use what many people have is a heat mat. A heat mat is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a mat that you plug into the wall and it gives some bottom heat to your seedlings. But what if you don't have a heat mat? They can be expensive or hard to come by. And what if the heat from your vents, from your furnace, isn't that reliable? Maybe the furnace only comes on every now and then. It doesn't give consistent heat. So what can you do? Well, this second hack might help you. The answer is as close as your kitchen. How about using an Instant Pot? That's right, you can use an Instant Pot because seeds germinate best when they have an even controlled temperature. And on the yogurt setting, it is 91 degrees, and that is just about perfect for any heat-loving seeds. Don't put any cold weather seeds in here like lettuce or spinach, but this is great for tomatoes and peppers. All you have to do is put the trivet in and then add about 1.5 cups of water. Add a layer of foil over the trivet so you have a solid surface. Next, set in some paper towel that you've dampened a bit with some water. Add a few seeds, sprinkling them around to give them some room to grow. These are lavender seeds. And then fold the paper towel over and spritz it with some water. Just put on the lid and set it to yogurt. Now, most seeds will start to germinate within 1 or 2 days, so you need to check them often, and as soon as they start sprouting, you need to get them in pots. Also, make sure that the water isn't gone in the bottom, and you might have to reset it depending on how long your Instant Pot will run in one cycle. But it's as easy as that. Well, what if you don't have an Instant Pot? How about a slow cooker? You can use this for the same thing, constant, gentle heat. Now, the trick is you don't want to just put your seeds inside your slow cooker because then you're going to cook them rather than germinate them. The best way is to put some water in and then cover it with something like I have this wooden board. Then you can put your containers on the board, cover them with something to keep them warm, and turn your slow cooker on to low. And then just keep checking them. So your seedlings have sprouted and it's now time to plant them in some soil in some pots. It's best to use moist soil so that when the seeds go in, there's lots of moisture around them to keep them growing. Even though you're going to water them, it's good to have the soil around them already damp before you put them in. But the hack is not to just use plain water. I use boiling water, and here's why. In your soil, there could be bacteria, insects, fungus, all kinds of things. Now, most potting soils or seed starting mix is sterile, which means it's already gone through a process to kill those things off. But if it's been sitting for a long time in your garden center, or maybe it's been sitting for a long time in your house or your potting shed, maybe the bag is open because you've already used some of it, there is a chance for more of those things to get back in your soil. If you have to moisten it anyway and you use boiling water, you can kill off anything that might have crept into the soil in the meantime. It just gives your seedlings a better chance to grow without the added challenge of dealing with some sort of disease or infestation. So that's what I do. Pour pour in enough to moisten it. And then you just have to remember not to use it right away. You don't want to cook your seedlings. You just want to moisten the soil. Let it cool before you start filling your pots. Now it's time to fill your pots so you can plant your seedlings. And there are a lot of different things you can use other than the store-bought plastic seed trays. Now, first let me tell you what I don't use. I've seen a lot of hacks that say you can cut an orange or a lemon in half, scoop out the pulp, and plant in those. And that makes a lot of sense. They say that the pulp that's left and even the rind will help give nutrients to your seedling, and that's all true. There's only one problem. This is organic material, and if you have a seedling that has to stay in a pot of some kind or a container of some kind for a while before you can plant it in your garden, this is going to rot. And I've had problems with them going moldy and rotten, and there's nothing worse than trying to lift up this sodden, goopy, moldy mass of peel to plant in your garden. So I am not a fan of this, unless it was for something that only had to be started for maybe a week. Other than that, no. Toilet rolls. Now, I was very excited when I saw this hack. You just have to make 4 slits in the bottom, fold it up, presto, container. And I tried it because I thought this is great, reusing my toilet rolls. I'm all about that. The problem was, I don't know why, whether it's what it's made of or the glue used maybe, but these went moldy on me so quickly. And again, I had to transplant them out of these and into something else before I could even put them in my garden. So I'm not a fan. Egg cartons. I don't mind using egg cartons, and I have used them at certain times. Sometimes I'll use the lid. This one has sort of indentation in it, so it's not great. But if the lid is just like one solid piece, I'll use that. But I'm not in love with these for the simple reason is they're fairly shallow. By the time you put some soil in them, you only have about this much space for your seedlings. And if you have a seedling that has a big root system, it won't be enough to keep them in here for long. So they're not bad for things like maybe onions or leeks that have very shallow roots, but for other plants like tomatoes and peppers, I need something a little deeper. So what do I use? Well, I have found a nice hack that has really helped my tomatoes and peppers grow healthy and strong. And that is I plant them in eggshells. The reason eggshells are so great for certain plants is because the shells themselves are made of calcium. Now, plants like tomatoes and peppers, and I think eggplant, they are susceptible to something called blossom end rot. You may have seen this on your tomatoes when they get a black spot on the bottom and it's starting to rot, just like the name sounds, blossom end rot. And that's from a lack of calcium. So what I do is when I transplant my tomato seeds, when they're sprouted, into a container, I plant them right in the eggshell. When I go to transplant them into the garden, or if I have to transplant them into a bigger pot if it's not quite warm enough yet outside, what I do is I hold it over the hole that I've made either in a bigger pot or right in my garden. And then I squeeze the eggshell until it cracks. And I do this over the hole, so if any pieces fall off, they go in the hole. And I do this, I crack the shell because you want the roots to have an easy way to come out of the shell. A tomato plant or a pepper plant's roots are going to get quite large. And these shells can be tough, and you don't want the roots trapped inside this little shell. So I crush the shell a bit, but I let it fall in the hole so that the roots still have access to all this important calcium as they're growing. It's as easy as that. And the tomatoes, peppers, and other nightshades that need calcium will be very happy to grow in their eggshell. I don't start all my seedlings in eggshells. I use them mainly for the tomatoes and peppers, but I start hundreds of seeds and I just don't have that many eggs. So I needed to find some other way to make some more containers because I try to avoid buying a lot of plastic in the stores. I like things that can be reused or that are good for the garden. So in finding other things to plant, I have come up with this. Now this was actually a gift given to me by a friend, but it's to make newspaper pots, and it's really, really easy. All you do is take a strip of newspaper, cut about 9 centimeters wide by 25 centimeters long. That's about 3.5 inches by 10 inches, but longer is fine. And then you take this little thing here, you put it part way up, and you roll it. And then on the bottom, you tuck it in like that, and you put it in here, and you turn it. Presto, little pot. Now the hack is, not everyone has a friend who has gifted them a little newspaper pot maker. But you actually don't need one. You can actually use many different things to make a newspaper pot. Any sort of jar will do. This is my favorite, cherry jam, and it doesn't even have to be empty. Do the same thing. Roll it, leaving some at the bottom, around whatever jar you have handy. Fold in the bottom, starting with the seam, and then just press it on a hard surface until the newspaper sticks together. And then pull it out and fill it with soil. And the best thing, and it will stay flat once the soil is in. And the good thing is you can make them any size you want depending on your container. Want a bigger one for a bigger plant? Use a bigger jar. Fill it with soil, and you're ready to go. These newspaper pots are perfect for plants like my loofahs. Loofahs do not like to have their roots disturbed when you transplant them. And if they kind of get jostled or moved, or if you have to pull them out of a container, they kind of have a bit of a temper tantrum and they just go into shock and stop growing for about 2 or 3 weeks. Now here in zone 5B, we don't really have 2 or 3 weeks to wait while he sort of gets over its temper tantrum and starts growing again. So these are perfect because the newspaper will easily break down in the soil. You don't have to rip it open or crush it like you do an eggshell to allow the roots to come through and grow bigger. They will manage that on their own with some water on the newspaper. But they are firm enough to last long enough inside to hold their shape until you're ready to transplant them. I do use soil blockers for some of my seed starts, and I really like them. I like that this one is really small and it's great for when I start a lot of plants like portulaca, flowers, which are really tiny seeds, and I want to grow a lot of them. And I also have the larger one in case they need to grow bigger. The only drawback with using soil blocks is if they are indoors, if you're using them for a long time and you're watering them a lot, sometimes the soil block itself sort of breaks down a little bit, and you might have to work to transplant them in the garden if they start sort of growing together, or if the soil sort of just falls apart. So I like to use these for plants where they're only going to be in my plant starting area for 2 or 3 weeks. But some things have to stay in pots longer than that. They take longer to grow. And for those, I use paper cups. Now, the best thing for me about using paper cups is that I can easily write on them with pen or marker as to what is in it and what variety it is. No more losing tags or labels. Just have a look on it and you know what kind it is. Now, the good thing about these paper cups is they kind of have a wax coating. They will last as long as you need them to before transplanting into your garden. In fact, some of them I've even kept and I've been able to use for a second season, but they are paper. They will decompose in the landfill. You're not adding to the plastic problem. Now, the hack for this is these little guys. These are easy to find. They are the little bathroom cups. They are paper. They are covered again with a bit of a coating so they will last, and you can write on them exactly what you're going to grow in them. They're easy to pierce the bottom so there's drainage, and they will last. They're inexpensive. I can get 50 or so. I think they've gone up in price now, as everything has, but I think they're still about $1.25 or $1.50 for 50. And for something that will last the whole season but is not plastic, I think they're well worth it. Sometimes, however, you do want some labels or some tags for your garden, your seedlings, to keep the varieties separate, or maybe when you transplant them. And if you're trying to avoid extra plastic in your garden, as I am, popsicle sticks are a good way to go. They're inexpensive, they're easy to find, they're at a dollar store. You can get lots of them for about $1. All you have to do is write on them with a marker or a Sharpie and stick them in the ground. But I found there was a problem with them. When they got wet or had been in the pot for quite a while, and the water would wick up, no matter what ink I used to write the name, it would get smudged or damaged, and it wouldn't even last the whole season. But I found a hack to fix that. And I found it in my bathroom. It's clear nail polish. This hack is really easy. So first I write what my plant is, maybe jalapeno, and then I take my clear nail polish and I just coat the end all over the words, both sides and the edges. Now, I don't go all the way down because I don't even really want nail polish in my soil, even though it's probably fine. But this still gives me lots of room of raw wood to stick in the ground. But this now will be protected, so I'll be able to read it for the whole season. And I just set it on something so it's off the wax paper, let it dry, and it's ready to go. The next hack is an easy one. Once your seedlings have been planted in their little soil blocks or their little containers, you're still going to want to keep them warm for a little while till they get established. You don't have to go out and buy those plastic trays with the domed lids. You can use things around your house, like this. This was a baby spinach container. I can't avoid buying plastic around my food all the time, but I can at least reuse it. And these make perfect little domed greenhouses when they're turned upside down. Ready to plant. The next hack I want to talk about is one of the easiest of all, but it is one of the most important, and it has to do with watering your seedlings. Now, bottom watering is best. You can also mist with sprayers such as this one so that you aren't drowning the plants or damaging delicate seeds by washing them away. But what I want to talk to you about is tap water. Now, here on the 8th concession, we're on a well, so we have natural water that hasn't been treated other than by our own system, which uses light and filters. But in cities or any place where you're on municipal water, you may have your water treated with chlorine. Now, chlorine, a bit of chlorine is not going to hurt a plant, but if there's a lot of it, and because your seedlings are so small, they're going to take in a lot of it and it can damage them. So this hack is simply to do nothing. That means when you fill your container, whether it's your spray mister or a watering can, and you have treated water, leave it on your counter 24 to 48 hours. Just by sitting in the open air, about half of that chlorine is going to dissipate and your water will be healthier for your plants. So that's it, my best 10 hacks for getting your seedlings growing and keeping them healthy in the house as we gear up for a new gardening season. Bye for now.